Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. An absolute pleasure to be able to speak to you today. Maybe you can kick off with a brief introduction to your film, Donna, for people who don't know anything about it. What can they expect?
Hi, Sarah. It's the film's about Donna Personna. She's a trans activist and performer based in San Francisco. And the film begins when she's offered the chance to write a play. She's in her early 70s, and it's a play about the Compton's cafeteria riot, which was an overlooked incident in San Francisco's queer past, where the police harassed trans women and they kind of staged a protest against them. So this play gives Donna some courage to kind of explore herself and her memories, and she decides to reconnect with her family. So that's the play, that's the film in a nutshell.
And, you know, what was the genesis of this project? I mean, how did you first meet Donna? But I guess more importantly, how did you sort of think that this was going to make a wonderful documentary, and I guess convince her to also be on board with it? Because it's quite, I don't want to say intrusion, but it's quite an intense process for her to go through herself, having cameras follow her around for, I don't even know how many years it took, but yeah.
It was around 4 years, and I agree, it's a huge intrusion, but she was really up for it, and she does love the camera. So I actually had to kind of give her more information than I usually would, and really convince her that if she didn't want to do it, it's okay. But she was up for it from the beginning. And I actually first met Donna 10 years ago in San Francisco at a gay pride pool party, and she really stood out. She was in this beautiful red sequin dress, deep in thought, and a friend introduced us and we started chatting. And she asked me to take some photos of her for a local magazine, and I did. And she had so many great quotes and so many great stories that I just flipped my camera over to record. And that's how I actually started making films. So I made a short film about her, which people responded to really well. Kind of always thought that my first doc feature, I kind of wanted it to be about her if a story came along. And when it did, I just kind of jumped on it and started filming about 4 years ago.
And of course, with the nature of any documentary, it's not the kind of thing, you might have an idea of what it's going to be about, the narrative, the themes, but until you start making it, you don't know what story is going to emerge. And that's even more extreme, I guess, when it's about one individual's life. So I guess, was that a leap of faith to an extent, both from the filmmaker's side, but also, you know, for Donna?
It was. Knowing Donna, I knew that she was changing and in the way she kind of thought of herself. And it was only when I started filming that she actually really referred to her transgender identity more often and kind of put that out there. And I knew she hadn't really connected with her siblings as Donna. They knew her as Gus. They'd never seen her in a dress. And I knew she was kind of building up towards that. And I just kind of felt, it was a bit of a leap of faith, but I felt, knowing Donna and her courage, that she would connect in a really authentic, quite gentle but authentic way. So I kind of knew something would happen, but yeah, you're right. I didn't know how long it would take and exactly how it would pan out.
And in terms of the logistics of filming, you said 4 years. Tell us a bit about that experience. What were some of the challenging moments, some of the highlights, and I guess it's a journey for you to go on as a filmmaker as well through that process.
It really is. It's hard because I'm in Cardiff, she's in downtown San Francisco, so there were some really frustrating times when I couldn't be there when things were happening, and she'd always tell me, even though she knew there was no chance I could be there, but she kind of wanted to keep me updated with things. So it'd be quite frustrating knowing I couldn't just go and film, but I would go for sort of long periods and just try and film as many story threads as I could. And it worked out, but it was hard. And there's lots of observational shooting, hours and hours that, you don't use, but you trawl through and you hope something's in there. So it was quite a difficult project, but it was great. And San Francisco is the most welcoming, amazing city. Everyone wants to be on camera. So you can film in places, lots of the downtown bars. I'd be filming and someone hands me a drink, and it's almost too welcoming and can be quite distracting, but it's great.
Accidentally getting drunk while you're supposed to be shooting a
Yeah,
film.
some people say that's my best shooting, but I don't know.
And actually, I was going to ask about San Francisco itself, because it feels like it's almost another character, if you want to say that, in the film. And particularly because you're British or Welsh, what meaning that city might hold for you personally, but also as a place, particularly for the LGBTQ plus community, and how places themselves and the atmosphere and somewhere being inclusive where people feel they can be their true selves, how important that can be in people's lives.
Yeah, well, it's hugely important. And for me, it was really personal. I came out in San Francisco in my early 20s. Yeah, I was really embraced by the LGBTQ plus community there. And kind of looked after. And so when I did come back to Wales, I was like, I was in a really good place. So yeah, for me, it's really personal and I love it. And, you know, I was embraced by the trans community there. So this kind of felt like a really nice film I wanted to make about them, especially going through what they do at the moment. So yeah, San Francisco's inclusive. It has its issues, but it really is a place where you're just allowed to breathe and be authentic and kind of explore who you are. And that's what I did. Yeah, it's personal to me.
And I was also talking to another filmmaker the other day who was mentioning there's kind of a double-edged sword sometimes, in the sense that in the past, where people weren't, society wasn't tolerant enough for people to be able to be themselves in public, and these underground kind of communities formed. And so although today it's not as much of an issue and it's much more embraced by mainstream society, there's kind of maybe a sadness attached to the fact that some of that is maybe dying off. Is that something you discovered as well?
Yeah, I mean, a few really key scenes, and actually one of the last scenes in the film was filmed in a bar called The Stud, a really wonderful place where, I don't want to make this all about me again, but I had my first boyfriend and we used to work there, and, and these are places where you can just be who you want to be. And that's closed, to do with COVID, but also people not kind of going to these places so much anymore. So I think it's a real loss if you lose these places. And I hope they kind of thrive in some areas. I know Cardiff's doing really well in that sense, and there's ups and downs, but there's always kind of a need for these spaces.
And what do you hope people take away from watching your film? Because it feels like, I don't know, whenever I see, things exploding on Twitter, which perhaps isn't the best representation of where things are in society, but it feels like the transgender issue has become so much about kind of labels and dividing people and groups. And there's something about such an intimate documentary like this, which completely humanizes the transgender experience. Donna is just a person that we can all grow to know and love through watching the film. So is that an important part of it, of making a documentary like this?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's really hard to watch Donna as a person and kind of attach all these political talking points to her, because she's really wonderful and inspiring. So I hope people kind of can see the courage she has and the sort of authenticity she tries to live by, and her kindness, and maybe take something away in that sense.
And I guess you can say it's about the transgender experience, but you can also say there's a universal message in there about the importance of all of us being able to find our authentic selves and be able to show that to our friends and family. Yeah,
I agree. And kind of doing that with the support of a community, whoever they are. And it can be a really surprising group of people that can help you. And I hope the film shows that.
And there was a really touching thing that was in the notes about how a documentary film can give away a small secret that can teach us how best to live, which I thought was a really nice quote. So yeah, in that sense, do you think that this documentary can do that for people? Everybody can take something from it.
Yeah, that was a quote a tutor at the Scottish Documentary Institute said once, and it really stuck with me. And I really thought throughout filming Donna that it was relevant. And I think, yeah, Donna's story of courage is can really teach us how to take our authentic selves to other people in a really gentle but kind of affirming way.
And Yeah, so in terms of some of the best moments in the film, I mean, when she first hears, you know, those other actresses, you know, saying the words in the play, her being up on that podium, I don't know, you know, those are the things that really hit home. And it's a very, very inspiring story to watch, because perhaps we can always feel that if people in the situation are always going to be marginalized, and it's just not the case.
No, and she did find some sort of power through other people and through her own memories and her own story, and she just kind of ran with it. And I know I don't always do that, and so I try and sometimes think of Donna and other people who do that, and you know, it really inspires me. I hope people can get that.
And so watching the film and looking back, you know, at the Compton cafeteria riots, you want to feel like progress has been made, and I guess in some senses it has. But do you feel like in other aspects actually there hasn't? And it sometimes feels like we are more divided and we're kind of moving backwards in other respects. Yeah,
no, it's a really difficult time. I've just come back from San Francisco, where we premiered, and there was a trans march, and it was so I mean, it was wonderful. So many people came together, but there was a real sense of urgency that we really need to do this now, and no one's sort of taking anything for granted. And I think people are really worried that progress is just going to go back, and it kind of is in some ways. So yeah, it seems like a struggle that's always kind of up and down. So I do feel stories like Donna's are really important and kind of will be for a while. I think that's my time, but can you quickly tell us what you might work on next after this? Yeah, I'm making a film back in the Bay Area, California. Been filming a Shakespeare professor who's 85, and I filmed him on his first day of retirement 8 years ago, and I'm carrying on for a couple more years, and it's a film about intergenerational friendships and kind of how you approach your final years in life. Another observational book. Amazing. We can't wait to see that as well, and for everyone else to see Donna. Thanks so much for your time. Lovely to chat to you. Thank you, Sarah, so much.
Jay. Thanks. Bye.
Cheers.